talk about here in a minute. Okay, so what is Thrive? Thrive really it's analytics for your analytics is what we like to call it. So it's looking at what you are doing in your analytics environment and then providing you information about that so that you can be more effective in user adoption and in taking advantage of the investment that you've made, whether it be in IBM Cognos or even if we go kind of back downstream in the analytics life cycle and look at how you're prepping your data and such. That all kind of feeds in or culminates into Cognos quite frequently. So we think that there's a lot of value for businesses in taking a look at this. So here are some questions that we were getting from a lot of our clients, or that we were asking our clients, I'm sorry, and they were having a hard time answering quite frequently. So what's your current version of Cognos? Okay, well, you can find an answer to that pretty quickly. But some of these items in here are not so easy to answer. So how many reports do you have that would need to be moved to Cognos 11 if you're doing a migration? How many framework models do you have? How many dynamic cubes do you have? Do you use some of these other studios that aren't really part of the core of Cognos 11? How many users do you have? I mean, how do you even answer that question? And in one sense, you could say, well, like we have this many, but how many of those haven't really logged in the last year? Or how many versus how many of those are in the application every single day? How do you quantify who's an active user? And what are those people, what are they actually doing? Are they running reports? Are they building reports on their own? Are they modeling? So these kind of questions are important both when migrating from Cognos 10 to Cognos 11 or doing any kind of migration between Cognos versions, but they also can be very helpful in just knowing the health of your current environment, knowing how it's being used, whether people are taking advantage of the resources that your developers are working hard to create. So of course, we have the Cognos audit reports. Those have been there for a long time. And they do a good job of answering some pretty basic questions like, like which report's been run during some time frame, how many times has it been run. You might be able to get that from an audit report. But we found that there's a number of problems or limitations, if you will. So it's very narrow slices of usage. They're definitely not comprehensive. If you want to customize them, it's time consuming. The package that it's based on isn't even inclusive of everything that's available in the underlying audit database. You definitely aren't getting any higher level statistics like trending over time or kind of comparing different periods of usage. So, I mean, they're good for if you just need a point in time to figure out kind of like what happened in regards to something fairly specific. But if you really want to use them for kind of usage and adoption monitoring or to see how your system is behaving, you're probably going to run into some limitations. And there's even inaccuracies in them. They're not always up to date. So there's just a lot of limitations with the basic audit reports. So we created something called Thrive. So this is really an application designed for user adoption and monitoring. PMsquare, an important value for us when we work with our clients, has always been and will continue to be user adoption, because we feel very strongly that you can create the most beautiful looking dashboards. You can create the reports that show up in people's inboxes every day on schedule. You can give them all kinds of opportunities to explore data, but if no one's actually using it, then you haven't created something of value to the business. And so that's really what prompted us creating this application. And so this gives you things like top reports, packages, and users for your environment, metrics about those users, how their usage patterns are changing, trends over time, more advanced visualizations, which reports or packages are maybe underutilized, and then allows you to even monitor which features are being utilized within your environment. And this is a modern software as a service application that's really intended to give you insights into what's going on in your environment. So here's a little bit just about the foundation of it. It's a custom developed application on the mean stack, utilizing D3.js and Tabulator. It's very interactive, filterable. It presents you a lot of data, but in a very intuitive manner. It allows you to define custom groups. So you don't just have to utilize kind of like broad sets. So let's say of users, you could actually group a set of users together and say, hey, this is our marketing department. I want to see kind of what their usage patterns look like. You can do that within the application. And then you can search for objects in Cognos, like a user or a report or a package, find what you're looking for easily. And here's just a brief look at kind of what's going on in the back end, how this all is happening. So you have this Cognos audit database, and then there's a little piece called the Thrive data uploader that essentially extracts the data from the audit database, puts it into the Thrive cloud, where that data is stored and analyzed. And then the user can just go in through an interactive web portal and they can explore that information to derive those insights. So here's a picture of what that looks like. This was actually something that we showed off, actually did interactive demonstrations at the conference. And you'll hear more in a minute about how you can see an interactive demonstration of that here in the near future. We're not going to do that today, but this gives you at least a visual in your head as we're talking about these concepts of what this actually looks like, what kinds of information is being communicated, kind of how intuitive it is, and how you can see quick trends and summaries at a glance. So part of that, part of those insights into your environment is going to allow you to kind of clean up your environment. So you'll be able to clear up cobwebs, so objects that have little or no usage, easily identify object owners, and identify orphans as well, so objects that don't have any owners at all, and maybe suggest potential new owners for those objects. This kind of thing is all really important. It can be important in general in keeping your environment clean, but when you talk about doing a migration, which it sounds like about half the audience here is thinking about doing in the upcoming year, these are important questions to be able to answer. You can spend a whole lot of time, not just on a Cognos 10 to Cognos 11 migration, but also migrating from compatible query mode to dynamic query mode. Probably a number of you are kind of familiar with that concept, and the whole Cognos modern architecture is based on dynamic query mode, but can be significant changes that are needed to models and reports in order to be compatible. So if you can identify easily which objects are actually high use, you can maybe cut out a swath that you don't need to spend valuable development time on updating them. And for the ones that you are going to update, maybe you can prioritize those. So you can do, the top 200 first, focus your time there. And then as time allows, you can tackle those that are only run, once a year or once every few months. So this just provides a little bit of additional information about, as you roll out Cognos Analytics, kind of how you can utilize the features of Thrive to make that a smoother process. And kind of as you do it, you can actually assign those users to a group, and then you can track and see how their usage patterns maybe change as you roll out these new features. Because obviously Cognos Analytics is not just kind of a point release with the same functions. It's kind of a paradigm shift in offering all this new interactive exploration capabilities. And so we think it's very wise for companies that are migrating to understand how their users are utilizing the new features. And so seeing usage patterns and then which features they're actually using once they migrate, this can be super valuable information to making sure that you're getting value out of your investment. So here's just some things that are upcoming that we plan on adding into this, and I'll just touch on these briefly. So we want to add in additional Cognos data, so it won't just be things from the audit database, but additional information that might come from the content store, et cetera. We're looking at adding other sources of data in. So obviously this would be kind of a paradigm shift in itself, but really allowing you to see broadly in your organization, if you have any other analytics tools, how those are being used as well, so you can get a more complete picture of how data is being used in your organization. And then also we're going to be adding in AI to the system so that it can do some classification. Maybe it can determine who's a power user, who's just kind of a casual or user or consumer, and classify them accordingly. identify leading indicators of change based on patterns from the past, and provide notifications so that you can kind of check in with users or even prompt them to go back and maybe revisit something they haven't looked at in a while. Okay, so if all this is interesting to you, there's two things you can do. One, you can go to the URL that's on the screen there, and you can sign up for updates or sign up for beta testing. There's a form that will allow you to just get updates if you want in your email inbox, or to ask to be a beta tester. And then secondly, there's going to be a webinar that's going to be held in June. So it's a little bit out in the future, but go ahead and just drop a placeholder on your calendar and tune in on June 7th.